Yes, that's right. Good thing we got an IT specialist. You earn your keep, right?
Yes, true, actually. Yeah. The IT part, yes. The talking part, not so much.
Come on. Don't sell yourself short.
I'm confident everyone here is very happy to have you here.
Thank you. Nandun, what's up?
Yeah. Probably. No.
Oh. Okay. Well, welcome, everyone. We've got a few people here, and welcome everyone online joining us here today on this special Sunday. It's actually quite nice outside, so hopefully we get to enjoy it. And to start off, we wanted to remind everyone that we have this. We have a group of volunteers here at FSS that can help us whenever we need someone to talk to. Right? Sometimes all we want, or all we need, is just someone to listen to us. So we offer this fraternal assistance that we call. And if you need someone to talk to, just reach out to us, and we'll set up a time to have a fraternal conversation. And to start our talk today, we'll be reading a text from the book called The Way, the Truth, and the Life by Francisco Xavier through the Spirit Emmanuel. And it's chapter 134, and it's titled, A Little is Enough. And it's from a passage in John in chapter 14 when Judas says, Lord, where have you come from, that you have shown yourself to us and not to the world? So here we can start to see how Judas is starting to question, why did Jesus come only to them, only to a few, instead of coming to the entire world? Which was one of the movements that Judas had that led to what he did later on. And Emmanuel brings a reflection saying that one of the most surprising factors about Christianity is the way the Savior chose to announce the eternal truths. Jesus did not appear amid sensationalist decrees, revolutionary triumphs, or situations of domination. No, he came in peace to a humble manger. He exemplified what he came to do. He talked to a few obscure people in a small village, and by doing just that, he prepared the transformation of all humanity. However, for the inferior world, Judas's question is still apropos. Ordinary people only understand those who impose themselves on others, even when they have to listen to tyrannical sentences pronounced from blood-stained daisies. They only comprehend shocking spectacles and the theatrical gestures of those who may be in a dominant position today, only to have to endure tomorrow the same transforming process imposed on the transitory world in which they took part. Jesus, however, spoke to the immortal soul. When Jesus talked to us, he doesn't talk to our eyes, he doesn't talk to our person, to our body, he talks to our immortal soul. That is why his revelations have never died. Furthermore, he showed that one's financial or social status is not essential for one to be useful, to be of useful service to God, nor is a city with its stately regimentations and resources. So edifying and simple principles, a nameless village, and a few friends are enough. The bearer of goodwill knows that this was the material with which Christ began the renewal of life on earth. So may we join our minds and our hearts in prayer. And these beautiful words from Emmanuel, we can invite our Master Jesus to come here and share his words with us. Only a few of us, but again, that's how he started. So Jesus, we ask you that you inspire all of us here today, opening our hearts to your words, to your love and kindness. May we learn from your example. And then we elevate our thoughts to our Lord, to our Father, thanking him for the opportunity of us being here today in a very cozy environment, which will hopefully allow us to be more comfortable, to build a very serene environment that promotes learning, that promotes sharing, and that promotes renewal. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Thanks to all the mentors here, our guardian angels, for all this help that we get. May we keep recognizing the help and enjoying the peace that comes with it. So be it. Very well. So like last time, I have Portuguese and English. I'll be speaking in English, but for those of you who might have a hard time understanding English, we've got all the text in Portuguese as well. And for somebody who knows English and wants to learn Portuguese, you can see them side by side. And today we'll be talking about family and whether we can see God's mercy within our family. And as far as books go, I apologize, this is only Portuguese. Oops. But I utilized a talk called Family and Renewal from a person in Brazil called Artur Valadares. He's a Spiritist, and he gives a lot of meaningful talks that we quite enjoy. Also the Gospel of Jesus. And as far as books from reference, we've got a few books from Emmanuel. We've got Vine of Light, this one here, The Way, the Truth and Life. And we also have one that I forgot to bring out. It's called Jesus at Home. And we've utilized this before, and it's a book that brings passages from Jesus that we can't really find in the Gospel to that extent. So it brings us a more intimate passages from his life with his disciples and others. So there's a lot of teachings there. It's very similar to a book called Boa Nova, or Good News, which also brings passages from Jesus, more intimate ones. And then from Kardec, we've got the Spirit's book, the Gospel According to Spiritism, and Heaven and Hell, which I don't often use. This is the fourth book here from the 5 books from Kardec. There's a reason why they're lined up this way. So the Spirit's book was the very first one, 1857. And then we got the Medium's book, the Gospel According to Spiritism, Heaven and Hell, and Genesis. They all spanned through, I believe, 12 years or so. No, 11 years. So from 1857 to 1868. With the first one marking, I guess, the start of Spiritism. So we'll start with a few questions, and we can answer them internally. Just a more intimate reflection. Thinking about our role in our families. So what do we think? What do I think is my role within my family? Not so much as a son, a daughter, a mother, a father, but a little bit beyond that. What do I bring into my family? What is my role within my family? The second one is reverse now. What do I think is my family's role in my life? So how has my family come to help me? How they have helped me change. And the last one is, can I see God's mercy in my family? And here we can reflect a little bit about mercy on its own without extending it too much, but we usually bring the reflection around God's mercy as the law of mercy by being every experience that we go through life. It might be something easy, it might be something tough, it might be a difficulty, and even though it might not look as like a loving learning opportunity that God has bestowed upon us, when we start to reflect, we can see that, even though it was tough, it taught us a lot. It taught a lot of things that we needed to learn. So, in a sense, do we see the mercy of God in our family? Any difficulties or any good things that we go through within our family? Can we see the love of God in there? And I invite you all to, participate. These are more like internal questions, but from now on, please interrupt me. We're going to have a good conversation here.
We don't want you to get used to it.
Yes, last week it was amazing. It was amazing.
We want to give you the opportunity to show all
all my slides.
Yes,
Okay. This time, for this talk, I almost brought the rest of last week's talk, but I couldn't cover. So.
We want to see all your decks today.
All my slides. But I'll keep poking. So to actually start talking about family, we wanted to bring something that's key to Spiritism, and it's something that Spiritism has brought to our lifetime that can help us understand a whole level of depth around our family. And Emmanuel, our good friend Emmanuel, he brings a good reflection in this book, The Way, Truth of Life, to talk about this. And it's titled Successive Lives. So can you guess what he's talking about? What law do you think he's talking about in this text that is called Successive Lives? Meaning having...
Reincarnation.
There you go. That is reincarnation. So we'll talk about reincarnation, which is this key piece of information that Spiritism brought to us that really brought a light into a lot of the things that we couldn't understand. And Emmanuel always brings something from Jesus, or from the Gospel, to reflect upon it. And he brought something in John chapter 3, when Jesus said, "You should not be surprised when I say you must all be born again. Very simple, very straightforward. You must all be born again. And Paul, actually, in the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 15, he also talks about how Jesus, if Jesus hasn't resurrected, if he hasn't shown us that life exists after death, all of his teachings and all of the faith that we had put on him would be in vain. So again, to show that reincarnation, like I talked about before, is that piece of the puzzle that kind of brings it all together. It makes it all make sense, logical sense. And so he says that the word that Jesus told to Nicodemus. This is, by the way, when Jesus was talking to Nicodemus. It was clear enough. It was very straightforward. Reincarnation is a universal law. It's right there. John, one of the most famous Gospels. And then he goes on to explain a little bit about it, right? Without it, so without reincarnation, without the law of reincarnation, earthly existence would be a whirlwind of disorder and injustice. In the light of your clarifications, so all the clarifications that the law of reincarnation brings us, we understand all the painful experiences along the way. Right, so it's, again, it's something very short, but with a meaning that we can take throughout our entire lives, because it basically gives meaning to a lot of the painful experiences that we go through in life that are not nice to go through, but when we can understand that there is a reasoning behind it, we can understand that it's actually good for us, that we can learn from it, we start to see it in a different way, and maybe it's no longer painful. Right? So the result of this reflection, when applied within our lives, can be very fruitful for us. And he goes on to say, man has not yet realized the full extent of divine mercy in the process of rescue and readjustment. To give a very rude example that I just thought about on my drive here, how can we explain this process of rescue or this process of readjustment in God's mercy? I thought about flossing. Something very how can I say, something that we should do it quite often, right? And so we know this, right? We know that we should floss often, but when we don't, meaning when we rebel against flossing, eventually we might get some cavities, and that's painful. Now, is the cavity bad, or is the cavity just trying to teach us that, you should really floss? If you didn't believe me the first time, maybe now you'll believe it, and you might start flossing it for a few weeks, and then you stop again, and then you get another cavity, and it's again painful until we learn. Right? It's a very it's a very simple analogy, but it somewhat explains that same thing, right? We knew all along the flossing was good for us, yet we chose not to do it.
Or sometimes we have a friend that has passed through that experience and tells us
Very
about
good.
it.
Absolutely.
And we don't believe.
Yes.
I think it's not going to happen to me.
Yes, no,
Mm-hmm.
no problem. My teeth are perfect, so I'm not going to have any problems. And then we have that thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there is another
Absolutely.
Jesus teachings that I recalled that is very much along with this is about the Beneventurances. I forgot the name in English.
Beatitudes.
Beatitudes, yes.
In the beginning.
Why Jesus would say to us that would be good for us to suffer, that we would accomplish happiness if he didn't prove that the life exists after death.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So it doesn't make sense,
Doesn't make sense.
the attitudes, if we believe just in one life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you, Sonia, for that, because I actually didn't even talk much about it, but it's that word that Emmanuel says of justice there.
Yes.
The law of reincarnation can help us in our logical minds see that there's no injustice in the world. And we'll see a little bit more about this. The law of reincarnation helps us see a relationship of giving and taking, where there is no real injustice. What is the saying that we usually say? I don't know in English.
There is injustice,
Yes, and right, but there's no.
wrongdoing. No,
Oh,
I don't know.
yeah, I can't remember it. Anyhow.
There's no victims.
Oh yeah, that's actually what I'm going to talk about next. Thank you. Yes. So yeah, the law of reincarnation helps us understand a little bit about justice. Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting, even in language, because at the end of the day, a lot of these, especially anything that came from Jesus, references a style of speech that was 2,000 years old with words that had meanings from 2,000 years ago. And one that I found always very interesting is this idea of suffering. Because actually, most of the Bible, and actually when Jesus is crucified, they traditionally, most Christians actually call it the Passion rather than Jesus' suffering, because back then passion had taken a very different meaning, had a very different meaning than it was linked to this idea of suffering, as opposed to what it's commonly seen as now, which is something that fills us with exhilaration or energy or these types of things. However, if you peel it back even further than that, suffering in and of itself, even back then, the root word, which escapes me now, the Latin, but the meaning I've retained is that it meant something different than pain, than hardship. It really just meant to endure. And that can be defined, or that can be interpreted in many, many different ways. However, what I found actually very enlightening about that is that it almost makes the rest of it, the pain, the difficulty, all of this almost superfluous, almost secondary, because you can endure without these things. You can definitely endure with them, and we often do spend most of our time enduring with them, but you could endure without them. In a way, it speaks a lot to Jesus, having resignation, consent of the heart to go through what he went through. Because theoretically, if you extend that out, it possibly could even mean that could even be pursued without necessarily that intense agony. I mean, there's pain involved with what happens, but the agonizing, the mental suffering, there's an ability for us to consider that almost separate to the two, and it informs that idea of, if you can endure, then it leads to that birth again, or that at the end of your life, that rebirth, and then through that reincarnation is just another process of endurance. However, all the rest, all the anguish, all the difficulty, all the pain, that almost makes it optional. I always found that very consoling, probably the word I use.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. No, thank you so much for that. Because there's actually so much I wanted to comment on that. And I was trying to find what Emmanuel said here.
But what I could, I agree 100% what you said, and we always have this idea of suffering, but suffering actually is not necessary.
Sure. Yeah.
We can, of course, we all go through painful situations, which is necessary for us to understand that that's not the correct way to go, because we are all apprentices of life. but we can go through without suffering
Yeah.
if we don't rebel
Mhm.
against the divine laws that are showing us clearly that that's not the correct way to go.
Mhm.
That's not the love way to go. So if we choose to go to the pathway, to the love pathway, we will feel the pain because we have imperfections and that hurts us, but we can learn from that experience and we can go through in a very peaceful way with the consoling idea that I'm learning from this situation
Mhm.
and this is good for me
Oh,
because I am growing.
no, I completely agree. If I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is the path is necessary.
Yes.
The pain is voluntary.
Yes, the suffering is voluntary.
Yeah. The suffering is voluntary, and I completely agree. And it feeds in. You're absolutely right. It's this idea of like, if suffering is really just to endure, you endure the path.
Exactly.
But all the rest of it, you choose if that happens, and then you can also choose to release it, and it's gone. It's gone as soon as you make that decision. Anyways, sorry, Victor, it's your show.
Definitely not. It's his. That's actually his. He's right there. But exactly, I like the word endure, all right? Because when we bring the knowledge of reincarnation, it certainly helps us to endure, to see it with different eyes, a different set of eyes. And the whole piece about the suffering, as opposed going through it without suffering, but still going through it, Jesus actually invites us to have that mindset in Matthew 11, verse 28 to 32, when he invites us all to come to him, because he will bring rest to our souls. He doesn't say he will take away the things we have to go through, but the way we go through the things we have to go through will be easier, will be lighter, but we'll still go through it. Right? Never promise to remove our learnings and our opportunities to learn, but it certainly can help us go through them. And again, we can bring that to family and even parenthood. Right? If you do everything for your kid and you shield your kid from every single opportunity, will they learn anything? But a parent can certainly help them go through the things they have to go through in life with some help, right? With some coaching and some help, but still letting them go through what they need to go through. That's what a master, it's what a guide does for us. Thank you very much. This is really good. See, it's not about the number of people. It's about the quality. Perfect. Okay, so, and this is something, so I gave this talk about a year and a half ago, and this is what struck with me, and it's exactly what Sonia was talking about earlier. Emmanuel says that the complete executioner and the complete victim are unknown to man. Meaning that there isn't a person that is 100% guilty and a person that's 100% a victim. The law of reincarnation helps us understand this, right? Again, it's not the first time we're here. We've come from a pretty long past, and we've done things in the past, good and bad, which means that the things we go through in life, even though we might feel that it's not fair, and we might think that we are the victim there, well, we're not 100% the victim there. The same goes to the executioner, if you will. It's a bit of a strong word for the translation, but basically that's what it means, right? It's talking about the one who does something and one who receives something. Who's at fault? It's not 100% one person. There's always some sharing of learnings there from either end. And, that's a big one, to explain this, he says, the Father, however, identifies the needs of his children and brings them together, periodically, through blood ties. So let's stop there. So here now we're starting to bring this a little bit more into the family side of things, right? We've been talking for half an hour and barely mentioned family, so let's start to bring this to the family. So the Father identifies what we need, right? He knows us better than we know ourselves. So He gives us the opportunities to come in these families with the purpose for us to learn from them and to be able to, perhaps reunite with past friends or reuniting with past people that we had some issues with, right? And because we are in that family, in such a tight environment with very, we talk about the blood ties, it kind of gives us that opportunity, and it almost motivates us to work through those differences because we are surrounded by sometimes the loving ties of blood relationships. Or in the network of edifying commitments. And this, what does it mean? Edifying commitments, the ties of edifying commitments, what we're doing here today. Edifying commitments are the commitments that we choose to do in life that brings us some sort of learning, some sort of evolution, if you will. And so, we're all here today, likely for a reason. It could be friends from the past, most likely. We're all smiling, but it could be people we might have had fights before. And through this loving environment, it provides us the suitable environment for us to work through those and be on the good side again. And so that they learn the laws of love amidst the difficulties and pains of destiny with the blessing of temporary forgetfulness. So, just to start moving along a little bit, I'm going to bring this passage here, which is right after the Beatitudes that Sonia brought to us. Again, it's part of the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And he says, Jesus said, "Settle the matter quickly. Do this while you're still together on the way." So again, this ties off very much so with reincarnation, which is, and we can bring this to family a lot, is Jesus inviting us to settle our differences, settle our difficulties from the past, while we have a chance, right? While that person is still here. Why wait for, maybe a few lives in the future for us to be brought up together again to settle those differences if we can do that now? And so Jesus invites us to settle those differences quickly. And he then goes on to say that, the more we wait, the harder it might get. So why not settle it now? And bringing this to the family, because again, in the family we are in such tight corners, it basically brings us very vividly in front of our eyes that if we have differences in our families, it's very bluntly put in our faces to have that motivation to actually go and amend those, right? Because you know that your family, you're likely going to spend a few days together, so why not settle it so we can actually enjoy the relationship. And so now we're going to start bringing, I'll skip this one for a matter of time, but let's bring a text from the book, Jesus at Home, and I think we have it in English, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. It's a very nice book. It's got short texts. I can't remember how many chapters now, 40 or so. But small little texts, and again, bringing some intimate passages from Jesus that we don't really see in the Bible. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you. Jesus in the home. It's with, it's again from Sheep Xavier through the Spirit Neu Lucio. And just wanted to check here. So yeah, I've got around 50 chapters, 49. And they're very very easy stories to understand, and it helps us connect with Jesus through the use of an easy language. It helps us connect with Jesus quite well. If for some reason we have difficulties of understanding some of the passages in the gospel, the language in this book helps a lot. And so let's see what he is talking about here today. I didn't want to bring all the text all at once. But in chapter 1, so we'll start off the book, he says, how can you expect a safe and peaceful community without the home improving? He says that the peace of the world begins under our own roof. If we don't learn to live in peace within four walls, how can we hope for the harmony of the world? Right? I could safely say that a lot of us want to live in a world that is very harmonious, that has that harmony. But that is the fifth consequence. That's a consequence far out there. If we were to backtrack and see, what can we do about it, it firstly starts with us, right? The smallest cell, I guess, if you were to think about it that way. The smallest cell of society is ourselves.
And actually there is a saying, a quote from Rui Barbosa,
okay,
which is a very famous Brazilian writer. Was he a writer or a politician? Something like that. Rui Barbosa.
I think of him as a writer, yeah.
It's a writer. And he says that family is the master cell of the society.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. Absolutely, exactly. It ties in really well here, right? That very first one is our own selves, right? Improving or understanding our own selves and going through our journey of progress. And then the next stage is within our own family, right? Within those four walls that we're invited to help, get help, and also help, right? That two-way street. So he says the peace of the world begins under our own roof, under those four walls, right? And then when we can find a little bit of peace in those four walls, that eventually will lead to, within our community, within our friends, and then it extends and extends, and eventually it becomes the entire world. But we can't expect the world to be in harmony if we can't even find harmony within the four walls. That's basically what he's alluding to here with family. So again, just a bit of a reflection on, thinking about the relationships that we have within our families, the good ones and the ones that require a little bit more work, and thinking about that invitation of Christ to settle those matters while we have the opportunity here. Again, to still talking about family, this book here, Heaven and Hell, the fifth one from Kardec, he brings us the reflection that the incarnation is necessary for both moral and intellectual progress of the spirit. He says that for the intellectual progress is through those obligatory activities and work that we go through life, right? The things that we do to bring our intellect, to improve our intellect. Now for the moral progress, which is the one that we're constantly being invited to promote, he says that the moral progress comes by the reciprocal need of man amongst themselves. Oh yeah, the need. So it's how we live in a society for a reason. It's because we need others and others need us. So much so that he says that social life is the touchstone of virtues. And this is really interesting because Arturo Valadares, who gave this talk first, he brings the reflection that, if we're not living a social life, if we're just by ourselves, we are not, we wouldn't have any vice or any virtue, because those are not being tested in a way, so we can't know whether or not we have patience or not if we're not exposed to a situation that requires patience, you know. So the social life, what he's talking about here, is the touchstone of the virtues, is what puts them to practice, right? To see, do I have it or not? And then he gives you the opportunity to actually learn and improve upon it. And that's why we need others and others need us.
We also have a law for that, right? The law of society.
Yes, that is a law. Absolutely. Which, is that the next slide? No. In a couple of slides, we will actually talk about that. And I was actually going to call you out on it. I'll skip this one. Oh, sorry. So yeah, basically it's how society, especially our families, right, which is the first, I guess, society that we're exposed to, and brings us a lot of, it puts a lot of our virtues to practice, right? And again, the same book, but chapter 2, now is when Jesus is talking with Peter, and he has Peter's family there and some others, and then Jesus gives a talk, and then at the end, Peter's mother-in-law was a little restless. She was a little didn't really understand, I guess, what Jesus said, and had some questions. So she asked him, Lord, what is our home life after all? We started the task among flowers to find a heavy harvest of thorns. And this she's alluding to mostly kids. You know, they start babies all cute, and then all of a sudden they turn into a few heavy thorns, especially during adolescence, right? So what's up with that? Why? You know? And then she goes on to say, in the beginning, it's the promise of peace and understanding. They come all loving and cute and babies, but then soon we had some unpleasant rocks along the way. So then Jesus, which is really nice because he was never to react to things. He would always, when hear something from somebody, he would look at them before giving a response. So before reacting to something that someone did to him, he would always pause, look at them, and then act with integrity. And so he responds, right? Home is the school of souls. So our home is the school of our souls. When we're kids and we go to school and we can't wait to get home, to get out of school, actually. Home is a big, big school for us. Joana de Angelis, who is the spirit that brings through a lot of books, through Divaldo Pereira Franco, she says that our home, our family, is the laboratory of our souls. It's the school of our souls, the temple where divine wisdom enables us, little by little, to the great understanding of humanity. So, when we are, within those four walls, trying to understand why sometimes we have the thorns, why sometimes we have the rocks, right? It's there for a reason, and our role is to try and understand why those are there, right? If we can't even understand our own family, how are we expected to understand what goes around us in the world? So, again, it's the school for our souls. Something that, again, the law of reincarnation helps us with a lot when we start to think that we chose to come here. We likely chose the family, and the family chose us. Right? So there is a reason. It wasn't by chance. And now, then to the question. So what is my role in my family? And we're not going to get an answer, by the way. It's just for us to think about it. But, I like this picture because you can see, the dog is in the middle and you have all the family kind of gathered together. So the role of that little dog could be to bring them all together. They're having an activity, and the dog is there so they can all be together and having a good time. So it's a little tough to read. In the home where there's only one person who sincerely believes in Jesus and adapts to his redemptive teachings, paving the way by the Master's standards, there will remain the supreme clarity of elevation. So this, to all those homes out there, that you might be the only one that believes in Christ, that follows his example or tries to abide by his teachings. Meaning, trying to lead a life of love, of charity, of justice, and all these other beautiful things that we can learn from him. If we are the only one, know for a fact, as by the way is Emmanuel telling us in the book Vine of Light, chapter 88. He's telling us this, that if you are the only one, be sure, you can rest assured that this is touching everybody's hearts. Your example is touching everybody's hearts. This brings to Sonia's and now Carol's one of their favorite sentences from the book Religion of Spirits, chapter 68, when he talks about that. I want to get it right. It talks about if the word helps us understand, the examples always drags. Meaning, we can go home and talk about Jesus, obviously, and that might help people understand. But what truly touches them is the examples. So it's our actions, our way of life that you talked about last time. Right? That's what touches the hearts and the souls of the people around us. That's what plants the seed in there. So having that knowledge and that faith, that even though it might not look like our examples are touching their hearts, rest assured that they are. It might not show up in the time that we want it to show up, but it will eventually. A great book for this actually, it's the book Ave Christo, or Hail Christ, which we have there. It talks about the story of, can't translate his name, Quinto Varro, and Tassiano, who was his son. And it took him, I believe, 3 incarnations. Two incarnations coming to Earth.
100 years.
100 years, thank you. For him to see his son being touched by Jesus' teachings, or by Jesus' love. Right? He chose to come to Earth again and try another time, and finally see his son being touched by Christ's love. So it took him, thanks to me, 100 years for that to happen. Right?
It's an amazing book.
That's an incredible book.
Oh yes, it's so many things that we can learn from it, and from the 2 lives of Quinto Varro.
Mm-hmm.
His resignation, his love towards Jesus and his son.
Mm-hmm.
It's so amazing, and help us to understand our mission as parents, as Christians, right? How we can serve Jesus by our examples, not only by words. Sometimes we say, but I don't know many things about the Bible, about Jesus' teachings. I cannot, what can I say to this person? Sometimes we don't need to say anything, but it's important for you to act according with his teachings, according with your beliefs. And this sentence actually comes along to the beginning of your presentation when you said that Jesus came and he taught just 12 apostles. Like what Jesus asked to Jesus, right? So he started his mission in a very small, like
Exactly.
very far away place with very small people, humble people. And after 2 years, 2,000 years, we're still here reflecting about his teachings.
Exactly.
So,
Lot to digest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he didn't write anything.
no,
Yeah.
He led by example.
exactly.
People can be what they see. It's
Exactly.
actually at our last in Calgary when we had our last election, one of the candidates said that, and it always stuck with me. I said that's a really enlightened way I felt to describe it. That people can be what they see, and maybe first and foremost that was the point of Jesus' presence, rather than writing something that we could read over and over again. The demonstration, to your point, Sonia, about the examples, the acts, and even in this story about the individual who had to live 2 lifetimes. And it also touches on the Spiritist law of progress, right? You come back to learn lessons, and if we accept that lesson, which as Spiritists there would be an inclination to, then you might suggest that if there's any value in the idea of proximity or closeness of things, then those that we are born into a family together probably have some of the most intense and profound lessons to teach us, because of our pre-existing relationships with them, but also because of a sense of sympathy, of similarity, of solidarity that we possess spiritually at whatever point in time that primes a particular response, sometimes a very uncomfortable and sometimes a very difficult response to bear, yet probably the most appropriate one for our spiritual progress. And sometimes it takes 100 years, but in the grand scheme of eternity, that's still just
Just 1 minute.
exactly. A turn of the page. So, and how wonderful it is to have a spirit, whether it be our son or a parent or otherwise, that we have the opportunity to learn from for 100 years to get that lesson finally, right? So,
Exactly.
Gratitude, I feel like, can come from that.
Absolutely.
Oh yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And
It's amazing.
yeah, I'll hold that thought, and I'm going to bring it a little bit later. And the other reflection here was the fact that at home, sometimes there's a difference between what we show ourselves to be outside the home and who we are inside the home, right? So if you come to church every week and then you go home and you're really rude to everybody else there, they won't learn anything from you. Will you be planting the seed in their hearts? Probably not, because you're not showing through your examples, right? And in the families where you are so comfortable with everyone around that you show yourself to be as who you truly are, right? And those are the examples that they'll see. So again, an invitation for us to reflect: how are we behaving at home? And it's funny because Lacordaire Lacordaire is a volunteer worker at the Spiritist Federation of the State of Mato Grosso in Brazil. And he's a very loving man. Like, all of us who know him, we see him as someone really, really loving, and he truly is. But then he tells a story that one time, I think it was his granddaughter or niece, I can't remember now, but they were driving back from church, and she asked him, why are you not like that at home? Why are you so love and kind there, but at home not so much? And then he was surprised, and then he started, talking and saying that, a lot of times within the family we're trialed more. So we tend to, maybe lose our patience a little bit more, right? But the fact is that we are all learning, so if we can show that we are recognizing those times that we're being impatient and trying to improve upon it, right? And you can learn that in itself, right? It's the effort to improve. So we're not asking, Emmanuel's not saying here for us to be perfect at home. That's not the case. But it's to show that we are working towards recognizing the things that we're not doing so well and then working on them.
Keep exercising, right?
Yeah. And then, very quickly, this is to you, Carol, because I know you like this question. 582 from the Spirit's book, and I think you can answer it.
Yes.
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 Now, it's funny, because they don't say just yes.
Yeah, they say more.
They say more. They say, it is, without question, a true mission. So it's not just simply a yes, but it is. It is a mission. It's a true mission, right? Because, it might not be easy, but it's certainly a mission, right? It's something that will certainly bring a lot of learnings, a lot of joy, and also a lot of tough times as well. But we will certainly learn from it. And I don't want to spend too much time here, but it is at the same time a very great duty, and it involves more than man things. So this is interesting, right? It involves a lot more than we can think. A family, right? A family to be brought in together. It was the daughter or the son who chose to come to the family. The parents will accept it. So, and all the wranglings that came from before. So there's a lot involved in a family. And then he says his responsibility for the future. God has placed the child under the guardianship of the parents so that they may guide him along the path of good. And attention to the words, may guide, not make. There's a difference there between, may guide the kids to do good as opposed to make them doing good, right? I think you can understand the difference, right? And just because we're running out of time, I wanted to bring this one because this one speaks to me. I don't have any kids, so this is a big one for me. We've talked a lot about the parents, right, and their responsibilities, but how about the kids? They have responsibilities too. And we've known this for roughly 3,500 years ago. This was before Christ. 1,500 years before Christ, when we heard that honor your father and mother. Right? Honor your father and mother. And this alludes to what you were saying right there, right? It's having the gratitude for all the things that we can learn from our parents. They chose to accept us in their families. And, even when we don't have a good relationship with our parents, just the fact that they chose to give us, to birth us, to give us life, that in itself is already a reason to honor them and to be grateful for them. Because they gave us the opportunity of reincarnation. And we talked a lot about reincarnation and all that it can bring to us. So they gave us the opportunity of that in reincarnation. So again, the reflection about honoring our father and mother. And if we have a good relationship with them, we can learn so much from them, right? Even more gratitude and honoring we can do, right? So this touches a lot of us because, if we are here, it's because at one point we had a father and a mother, even though we might have not met them. In our minds, we know they existed.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to remember as well that although we can learn a lot from our parents, we can also see them as immortal spirits who are not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So we will understand their flaws too. It's a way
Absolutely.
to honor them, I think.
Absolutely. That's part of honor and part of respect as well.
Yeah.
Right? Seeing them as, like you said, immortal spirits. They're not perfect. They're also learning from the same person or the same spirit than us.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And there is this chapter of the Gospel of Spiritism that is honor your father and your mother. And there is a beautiful text there from St. Augustine.
Okay.
And he talks a lot about the relationship between family, and talks a lot about how parents, what's the mission of the parents, and how us as kids should honor our fathers and mothers. It's very important for all of us to take a look in this text.
Yeah. Thank you, Sonia. Yes, St. Augustine. I actually took it out, but I had it in here.
Did you?
And I had it. But, I'll bring it to you. The chapter. Oh, I think it's chapter 14.
Chapter 14.
Yeah, when St. Augustine is talking about parenthood. Yes. Thank you for that. And so I want to end with a passage that was shared with us here last night when we were talking about kids' education. We had a lovely friend come and guide us a little bit with children education, and she brought this, which is a passage from Mark when Jesus is talking about the mustard seed, which is a very famous passage, but I want to bring us the reflection about this, that a mustard seed, again, is super tiny, it's a very small seed. Yet, when planted, it grows and becomes the largest of all garden plants. And the reflection that I wanted to leave with you all here today is the fact that, when we are working to be loving spirits, kind spirits, charitable spirits, within our family or within society, like we talked about, we are planting seeds in everyone around there. And know for a fact, like Jesus told us, that when planted, they will grow. They will become large plants in large gardens. So they will blossom at some point. It might not be when we wanted, but knowing, like we got the reflection from Hail Christ, they will flourish at some point. And Paul, I can't remember which book now, but he talks about the fact that, when we lead with love, when we lead with charity, we are by default a disciple of Christ, regardless of what we subscribe to. So if we're showing the virtues that Christ came to share with us, we are already his disciples. So thank you all for the amazing participation, and hope to see you all again. Thank you.
Some people are watching online. John and
Oh,
Anna.
John. Good. Yeah. Thanks, John. And who else?
Saying hi. Anna.
Anna. Thanks, Anna. Good to have you all here today. Very well. So let us end in a little prayer. And with that image that is still showing, we want to imagine ourselves being held by Christ, feeling his love for us, feeling his trust on us, feeling the faith that he has on us, that we're capable, that we are enough. And I'd like thank you, Christ, for showing us the way, for showing us patience, the patience that you have with us. That so many times we're led astray, and you're always there waiting for us to come back. So thank you for teaching us so many virtues. Thank you for being the virtues that we model and that guide us. May your light, may your seed within our hearts grow, flourish, and blossom into beautiful flowers with beautiful scents. Thank you again for your inspiration to all of us, and for your love and kindness. So be it.